Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another virtual conversation at the Lambs. For those of you who are not familiar, the Lambs is the oldest professional theatrical organization in the United States, founded back in 1874. And over our history, the Lambs have left quite a footprint in our industry. It was Lambs who founded the Actors Fund, Actors Equity, ASCAP, Screen Actors Guild. We were involved in the merger of SAG-AFTRA. We're also part of the founding of United Artists and Paramount Pictures, and the list goes on and on. You can find our complete history on our website, which should be posted in the chat. And what we have been doing now for 1 year is these virtual events to keep our membership active and to keep growing the awareness of our organization outside of the Lambs. And we're very excited to have our two guests tonight. And I will turn over to our host, who is a member, Foster Hirsch. And I think, Foster, you've published 3 books this week alone? And with that, I'll turn it over to Foster. Take it away.
Thanks, Mark. I'm delighted to welcome prolific Broadway producers Stuart and Bonnie Comley. Their credits are incredible. I have so many questions to ask them about so many plays over so many years. But Stuart and Bonnie, I actually want to begin with the present. I noted with interest that you were part of the production team of The Minutes at the Tracy Letts show that was about to open at the Court Theater. And of course, it didn't open because the timing was such that theater was closed down. Can you tell us about the status of that show, or take us backstage as to what happened in those last days? Did you know it was coming, and what was it like being on the firing line there as you were?
Well, you mentioned The Minutes, but we had a couple other shows that we were doing that were on tour. We did, like everyone else, you sort of got rumblings of something going on. We were looking forward to the opening night of 6, which was on March 12th. And The Minutes was supposed to open up on the 15th. So, on the 12th, I guess it was in the afternoon, when the governor said, that's it, we're pulling the plug on all of Broadway. Our first concern was to get everybody home, to get everybody into a safe place. And we, at that time, thought it was going to be for a couple of weeks, like everyone else. But we were also so concerned for the health because, especially in the acting community, within the theater community, we had in our Broadway HD offices, we have 3 different offices on the East Coast, and we had a meeting for all of our staff in our New York office on March 11th, and some of them were coming to the opening night of 6 with us the next night, and to receive that news. And we actually got news that one of our staff had tested positive on March 11th. So we couldn't even go to the opening nights that we were scheduled to go to because we had to quarantine. So it was, like the rest of the world, you're in a panic for our employees and for ourselves. Like, is everybody okay? We just heard this is this deadly virus. Are we okay? Did we expose our children? Did they expose us? Where are we? What's going on?
Did you know it was coming? Did you know it was coming?
No, actually, by that time we were bumping elbows with people, but we weren't wearing masks. So quite frankly, it was a shock. I mean, for the crew, the cast, we had, we had the dress run through, and we're constantly working with the show, especially the ending and massaging the reactions. And it was quite a shock, really. I mean,
you expected to open. You did expect to open
on March 15th.
Absolutely.
Yep. So it was really it was surprising. And with The Minutes, what the plan is that our plan was, after a couple months, okay, we're going to open on the anniversary of the opening night, March 15th, 2021. And then we pushed that back, and now we're trying to keep the cast together.
So we're there, aren't we? We're at the 1 year point.
No, as I said, we pushed that one back a while ago.
No, we're looking at March 2022.
Yeah,
for
the
reopening
doing the
of the show.
to keep the cast together.
Do you have that date?
I believe
we have it everybody's penciling it in because there are no official opening dates at this
Well,
point.
as Broadway insiders, which the two of you certainly are, what's the word from inside about a realistic time when Broadway will reopen? Is there word?
It's not, unlike what happened on March 12th, there isn't going to be a switch that's flipped and then 41 theaters just go dark. It's not going to switch back on and have all 41 theaters come back on. It's going to come back on in layers. I think that the nonprofit theaters are going to actually open up first on Broadway because their economic model is different. They are not as dependent or not entirely dependent on ticket sales. They have patrons and sponsors that will help them if they have to open at any sort of limited capacity, where that does not work for commercial producers.
It's going to
So
take
for
well, it's going to take a lot of being able to handle the protocol that the unions are going to set up to protect the actors and the stagehands, the rehearsal period, as well as making the audience feel comfortable enough to come to see a show in an enclosed area. I mean, already I can see Shakespeare in the Park opening up before Broadway does.
And Lincoln Center is opening up. They have a 16-acre campus. They're opening up their outdoor spaces. They're working with other organizations to actually produce. City Parks Foundation that does the summer stage is actually looking at, they don't want to put their whole stage back up again, but do they do tented and do they do other, other stages around the city? So people are looking at opening up the 41.
But can commercial producers like yourselves function with, let's say, 50% capacity?
Foster,
Can't make it. You cannot.
That you could break even at 50% of the house gross. So the weekends were when you made your money and you broke even Tuesday through Thursday. That was the old philosophy. So the answer is no. You cannot really break even on the cost of a Broadway show and make a profit out of it if you're doing it at 50% capacity. That's your break even.
The way that things are structured with unions.
And there's no system in place to relieve you or help you?
There is
money that you could get to function at 50% capacity?
There isn't for the commercial.
No, not for commercial.
No, I think the Lincoln Center and the nonprofits will get some support. There's always the National Endowment for the Arts, which should be greater, but that's not their fault. But it's really counting on the patrons and the supporters of the local theaters, regionally especially, or Roundabout or Lincoln Center, to really keep it going.
But will there be resistance from theater goers to go back into a crowded Broadway house? Will there be some anxiety about that?
Well, I think, the good news is that the shows that were on Broadway provided a much wider demographic than they ever have in history. So I think that you will find people that, so I don't think it's not a one size fits all for any of the shows. The shows were very different. They attracted very different audiences. And so I think that the audience is very different for each of those, and the shows themselves are different. So I think that it could be show by show. I think you also have to take into consideration the longer running shows are the ones that are more recognizable, but those are the ones that usually the tri-state area theater goers have already seen. So they rely heavily, in fact, 60% on out of town ticket buyers. So,
that market will be depressed for a while, the tourist market.
I think so. Not in the same, I think it could be a different kind of tourist that comes through. I don't think it's going to be the 60%, international tourists that we've had. So I think it might be domestic that come to New York.
It's challenging because I can go down to Florida today and there are dozens and dozens of people walking around without a mask. I can go to I can go to Texas, and even though it might be cold, they're not wearing masks down there. There'll be theater goers that will come. I think New Yorkers have been much more prudent about it, and they are more conscious of it. And I think they are more concerned. So the social distancing, but you can't do a Broadway show at 50% capacity and make money at it.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Not going to work. You have several shows besides the Minutes? That was the one I knew about. But you have other shows pending?
We had The Lightning Thief was on tour. We had My Fair Lady that we were part of the tour. And we had The Minutes that was opening up. And I'm missing one
A small
somewhere.
piece of six.
Oh, a tiny sliver of six. So.
And so the Minutes is scheduled to reopen a year from today, practically.
I think
Pretty much,
Jeffrey
that's the plan.
has set
Jeffrey
the date.
Richards,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now I want to ask you some large pictures. You are prolific producers. You are producers who function in groups. The day of David Merrick Presents is no longer with us. So you're not above the line producers in that sense. David Merrick Presents, and there was nobody else. Hal Prince Presents. That's who presented the show. What is it like working on a show where there's a team of producers? Who takes the lead, and how much input do you have as producers in a group situation?
Well, let me say, we have produced shows above the line,
Yeah,
and won a Tony Award for at least one
Yes,
of them.
Stu and I
Jay
have been
Johnson,
lead
the two and only.
producers and
So we
developed
have
shows.
been above the line on several, including Taj and but in terms of working with a group, I think one of the most exciting experiences I had was working with the Thoroughly Modern Millie, where we were working till when we started previews in New York, we were running 3 hours long, and I'm going, this is like Les Miserables, and we're not Les Miserables. This is Thoroughly Modern Millie. We got to scale this down. So we worked like hell during the rehearsal, during the previews that we had. Everyone on board was just, how do we tell the story as lean as possible? How do we tell the story as clean and funny without all the smoke and mirrors that interfere with what we're going? And they were a great team, and it worked. I mean, it worked. We won the Tony that year. And I had another good experience with Tommy Tune when we did Will Rogers Follies. Even more challenging because we didn't get to go out of town as a tryout. We actually started previews in New York and opened up cold here. Tommy was a genius on that.
And I do think that, the lead producers are the general managers basically of a show, the general partners of a show. And I think that, those are the ones that make the major decisions. And those are, for people that aren't familiar, there's the general partners, the lead producers that you're talking about. And they really have the liability for the whole show. And that's really why they have so much say in the show versus the other group of producers, which are the co-producers on the show. The lead producers basically have the financial burden of raising all that money, which everybody thinks is simple, but there's really 3 different buckets of money for a show. There's the development, that money that it takes to develop a show and get it before it actually opens up any place. Then there's the money that it takes to run the show. And then there's the closing costs for a show. So there's 3 major costs for these shows that, if any one of those areas goes over budget, it goes back, the liability falls onto the lead producers. Whereas the co-producers are someone who says, if you have a $10 million show, the lead producers are the ones that say, we're going to raise this $10 million. We have our budget that says it's $10 million. That $10 million is going to get us to opening night and a little bit further. But if the show ends up costing 11 or 12 million, the co-producers who said, well, I'll raise $500,000 are still only liable for their $500,000. Whereas the lead producers are going to be liable for that extra overage of that extra $2 million. And so that's why they get to make more of those decisions, because the liability, rests with them on that.
So there is a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy among producers.
Is. And it's
There's a hierarchy.
Liability.
I mean, in the old days, they used to have a general partner would take on the liability. The limited partner was, limited to the amount of money that they invested in the show.
And you've been in all capacities as producers. I think you've been in all those categories.
And a theater owner on top of that. So I get to experience the whole ball of wax.
But I think that big group of co-producers that we've seen might have to be bigger once we, get past COVID. because those are the people that really do help to raise the money. These shows were really expensive, pre-pandemic. And a lot of them, they're brought in because they can raise money. They are brought in repeatedly because they can raise the money that they promised to raise. But I think that, a lot of them don't necessarily have a very long history in just theater, but they have some other business experience that got them to the place where they are really a sophisticated investor. And so they do have a lot of insights that I think are really valuable within the theater community. So I think, I never want to be dismissive of all the co-producers that are out there.
No, that's fascinating to hear this, because the general public does not know what producers do. They really don't. I think we all have a vague notion of what producers do. Who calls the final artistic shots? The lead producer or a hotshot director?
Even if it's not a hotshot director, I would say director, because I make the analogy to a cruise ship. So the producers are really the ones that own the cruise ship, and they're the ones that have funded it, and they basically hire the director who's that captain of that ship, and then the captain hires all the crew that's going to be on the ship. But once you actually get into rehearsals, that's when the ship kind of shoves off from the shore. And once you get off the shore, the producers, the owners aren't on that ship anymore. So it really is the captain's ship. Yeah. And it's very hard to turn anything around once you're in rehearsal.
No, I agree with that. And let me just qualify that in my opinion, it is the hotshot anyone who controls the ship. I did a show with Neil Simon, and it didn't matter who the producer was, who the director was. Neil Simon called all the shots because, well, he's Neil Simon. So certainly if you had, a show with Gower Champion, you might just go with him. But certainly it depends on how powerful the director or Sondheim is, that you're dealing with. So it varies.
Did you ever feel frustrated that your opinion wasn't being heard? Can you share any time there was an artistic difference and your point was not honored in the way that you would have wished it to be?
I've always worked with a good team. So whether it was Tommy Toon or the team with Thoroughly Modern Millie, they were always willing to take, other ideas and anything that would improve the show. And that's always what the point was, how to make the show better. We're working as a team. We're working on one project to make it the best possible project we can have. And I think so I've been very fortunate that way. I've never been that frustrated.
I think the frustration can come after the show actually opens. So I think that, again, there's creativity in raising the money. There's creativity in, raising the money and putting it into the show. And then there's creativity in spending money to keep that show running. And I think that, the after the show opens is where some real creativity has to come into play, because you are competing in an arena that is, the pinnacle of live entertainment is New York City and those 41 Broadway theaters. And you're competing with all the other, Broadway theaters that are open. You're competing with about 200 off-Broadway theaters in New York City. Then there's probably, who knows how many that are off the cabaret spaces, the, stand-up comedy clubs, and people that just want to stay home and watch TV. So there's a lot of competition for that, for that dollar to, keep, like dollars or 125 of them for one ticket to a musical pre-pandemic. So keeping
my sense
have to be really creative, and I think that's where the the longer term money and where that can get really frustrating.
My sense about both of you is that you're in the theater. Of course, you're commercial producers, but both of you from an early age were stage struck. Tell us the truth. You love the theater.
Stu has a better.
That's my story.
That's your story.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs here of New York, in Great Neck, and I was best friends with this kid in fifth grade. For third, fourth, and fifth grade, I was best friends with this kid, Ricky, and I used to be with him all the time. And Ricky actually introduced me to like the Broadway album of West Side Story, to what Broadway was about. And I used to see his father at home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon after school, and say, Ricky, what does your father, doesn't he work for a living? And Ricky said, well, my dad's an actor. He works at night. He works at night? What a great concept. Everyone else knocks their head against the wall during the day, and he goes out at night when it's fun. Tell me more. Well, I'd never heard of his father before, but he had some credits. I know that, but I'd never heard of them. And then one day, that first Broadway show, I'm invited. His father was in a Broadway show, and I was invited to come see it with him. It was a matinee. And so the whole excitement of coming into New York, getting a tie on, putting on a jacket, going to a real theater, not one of those matchbox theaters that you had in movies in my neighborhood, but a real theater built in 1913. And then you get a program, a souvenir, and then a ticket that doesn't say admit one. It says the name of the show right on it. So I got like two souvenirs already. They march us down to the front row, and the curtain goes up on a musical called Little Me, starring Ricky's father, Sid Caesar.
Oh.
You know who Sid was? I was 11 years old. So Cy Coleman had done the music, Neil Simon had done the book. It was a beautiful production. The audience is going crazy. The actors are on stage having a good time. And because I'm in the front row, I actually see some of the action going on in the wings as well. And then we go backstage afterwards, and there's Sid holding court with all his friends, and they're laughing and comparing cigars and backslapping. And here he is, he's got his TV and his hot plate and his bed, his little home away from home. And I'm going, this I could put my life into, to tell stories live on stage and live this kind of life. So I was convinced at an early age that this is what I wanted to do. So from then on, it was the drama classes, the speech classes in school, acting classes.
So Stuart, can we say you're seeing Sid Caesar and Little Me made you stage struck?
Oh, absolutely.
That was your fate. That was your fate. That was your fate. In a general sense, how do you choose shows that you want to invest in? And do you ever disagree about which shows to go with?
We always disagree.
You always disagree.
No, that's not fair. No, we don't. But we look at two different items. I think I'll look at the script and the plot and the characters to see whether it's an engaging piece of work. And I think Bonnie will look more at the financial side of it, where she'll see whether it makes practical sense from like what it's going to cost, what's your operating expense, and so forth. So I think that we bring a good combination to the process.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So are you the softer touch, Stuart?
Well, the answer is I don't think so, because when push comes to shove, I'm a bottom lines guy as well. So if it doesn't add up, I'm not going to, if I want to donate money to the theater, I'll go to the nonprofits. I'll give to Lincoln Center, I'll give to Manhattan Theater Club, I'll give to Roundabout. But if I'm doing a commercial show, no, I need to know the bottom line.
And when you invest in a commercial show, do you always believe in the show? Do you always like the show? Or do you sometimes make a decision based on purely financial considerations? Do you always like the shows you invest in?
I really always like the show I'm involved with. There have been a couple of ones that didn't quite work out. No, Enron is one. I thought Enron was a terrific.
I'm going to ask you about your biggest shows, but I do want to talk about the flops too. So we'll get to that. Okay. I have it all worked out. Let's start with some of your really award-winning. You won Tonys for shows like A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, which people loved. A stylish, wonderfully intelligent musical, wonderful taste on stage. It was a great show.
Great
and
show.
You won a Tony for that. Did you know it was going to be that kind of a stylish show going in, or were you hoping for that?
The Gentleman's Guide was a very crowded season, as we say. So that one was more about relationships. Stu's had a relationship with Joey Parnes for a very long time. And Joey, because it was a crowded season, was looking for other co-producers and said to Stu, can you come in and help me out with this? And I said, look at what the competition is for this year. Are we even, never mind, win a Tony. It was just, is anybody gonna notice us in this season?
Oh, yeah.
It was, we were up against.
There was Aladdin that year, Bullets Over Broadway,
Broadway.
Big musicals.
Yeah, I know we're missing a couple of other ones.
Ones that you could pronounce, like Gentleman's Guide for Love and Murder. Actually, Aladdin, you actually do that.
So it was a very crowded season, and it didn't look like the best timing for this show. It was a great show. It is a great show, but the timing of coming in that season just looked like, is this such a good thing? So that one particularly was due to relationships more than the really good script that it was.
But you weren't sure about its commercial prospects.
Oh,
You
no.
weren't sure.
I mean, one of the things, when you talk about the having, being frustrated, we kept saying, the name, it was based on a movie, but that wasn't even the name of the movie. So A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, which is the full name, everybody just kind of calls it Gentleman's Guide now for shorthand, but A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder was based off of a movie called Kind Hearts and Coronets, which no one is, not a lot of people are familiar with that either. So it wasn't like, oh, based on the famous movie, people were struggling to get what the movie was that it was based off of. So the title for me was an issue, and kept saying, I'm sure it really, can't you just go back to the, to the authors and say, could we come up with something that people are going to remember? So it was that, it was, but it was a great script, and the music, and it was so clever. It was, it had everything going for it, except that it was in a crowded season with a title that nobody was going to, we thought no one was going to remember.
A title nobody can know, no stars in it to support it. No one knew the title. I mean, everything going against it in a season that was heavily competitive with larger, more musicals that we had higher expectations for. And but we loved the show. We loved what we saw. As you said, it was smart, clever, entertaining.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So we had, if this doesn't work, I have no business being in this industry, that kind of thing. So we went for it.
Another smart show a number of years earlier, I think you got the Tony for this too, Will Rogers Follies, which you mentioned.
Yes.
Directed by Tommy Tune. I mean, if I saw the prospectus for that show, I'm not sure I would have thought it would be a hit.
It took
I'm not sure.
They had to convince me because Peter Stone's book was more like a review, which is why we called it a show, in review, and even the first time they did a presentation for me, it was supposed to be charming. So I was playing. Cy Coleman was doing the piano, Comden and Green were doing the dialogue, and Tommy Tune kind of ran in, said hello, and ran out. And I was not impressed with that. I told Jimmy, I don't want this. I don't know if this is a show we really want for the Palace Theater. So the producer, the guy who did the Grammy Awards, Pierre Cassette, said, look, I'm doing another presentation at Tavern on the Green. Why don't you come see that? I think you'll like it better. And this one had Keith Carradine. And watching Keith Carradine go through the songs and dialogue, some of the dialogue, I said, I could spend 2.5 hours with this guy. This character is so warm and so funny, and I want to know more about him. I can see this working. And so we booked it into the Palace.
Yeah, Keith Carradine was terrific in that part. One wouldn't have thought so necessarily, but he was. It just worked. It just worked. And you mentioned Thoroughly Modern Millie, which was a huge hit. And that also got you a Tony Award.
Yeah.
That's 3 so far. Stu's got 3 more.
Yes. For Warhorse.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
A play.
An amazing play. We saw it in London and wanted to be involved, but it was a huge play. It had so many cast members, so many actors, because a lot of them were involved in the puppetry. So it was a big, expensive play, and big plays don't always make money. But it was so special, and we just didn't feel that we weren't the right ones to be, we weren't the ones to lead produce that. And the National Theatre was doing it in the UK, and they worked with Lincoln Center to do it here. And then we were part of the, the commercial group that was put together to work with Lincoln Center on that.
Now, over the years, I noticed you were involved in a lot of revivals of musicals, great musicals. Fiddler on the Roof, West Side Story, Gypsy. Are revivals of canonic titles dangerous in the sense that you have to have exactly the right cast, exactly the right ingredient to make it work? And can it slip if you don't have all the right elements in place?
Oh, Foster, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's certain shows that I feel are like, the perfect musicals that can guarantee help support a nomination. So you talk about Gypsy or Fiddler. These are great musicals. Now,
Great.
yeah, I mean, are you going to get it all right? Is the set design going to be correct? Is the costumes going to be good? Is the leading lady fit for the role, or the leading man fit for that role? That you leave up to happenstance and kismet. But the shows themselves are solid shows. So I believed in those. If 10 years ago, and at my age, 10 years flies by, and all of a sudden it's like, didn't we just do Fiddler? And they go, no, that was 15 years ago. I go, Jesus. Let's do another, let's bring it back, So there is that factor. Even with Lacage, I did the original Lacage au Faux back in the day, and they did a revival. It was like 20 years afterwards. They finally did a revival and did another one like 4 years after that. Both did, I think, won awards. So, yeah.
But the revival of Gypsy with Bernadette Peters,
Directed by Sam Mendes.
I've heard that her performance was uneven, that she would give one kind of performance one night and a different performance another night. Was she directed by two people? Was Arthur Lawrence giving her advice on the side and then Sam Mendes? And if she followed one rather than the other, the performance was stronger?
I think if you didn't see her do two different performances, it's unfair to say that.
Say
Let me
that.
start. Sorry, but let me start there, and then I'll take it back. Because if you're a great actor, every performance should be different. That's my other piece of advice, to a statement like that. I think that we received negative publicity from the beginning because Bernadette is an absolute theater person. She is a dedicated actor, and she was at every single rehearsal and giving her all, and all of these, union rules that allow for, 12 out of 15 and all, like just overtime like you wouldn't believe. And she ended up getting sick in previews, and she missed a couple of performances. So that might be part of it. And then there was the Michael Riedel incident where he mentioned her in a column and put her picture on a milk carton and saying, has anyone seen Bernadette? And we never fully recovered from that at the box office because people would either call that time, yes, in 2003, 2004, where a lot of tickets were still sold by phone at that time. And people would say, is Bernadette going to be there? Are you guaranteeing? And she missed I don't know exactly what the number of performances were, but it was such a small number of performances that it never should have turned into that. And it should never be, 20 years later, us talking about her being inconsistent. Other performers, yes, I'll maybe give you that. I will stand by Bernadette Peters and her performances anytime.
Yeah, I'll say of all the Mama Roses I've seen over the years, the decades, and I've seen a lot of Mama Roses, Bernadette's was the most compassionate one, where I could actually believe why Herbie would fall in love with her. She showed a softness to Mama Rose, which I have not seen in any of the Tyne Dailies or the Patti LuPone's or even Staunton that did the London production. So this was a compassionate Mama Rose that you actually felt a little sympathy for, not anger. So there was a lot to be had there.
Okay, good points. Now you've worked with lots of famous stars, headliners in your shows. I think 2 times with Al Pacino, China Doll, and Merchant of Venice.
He sells tickets.
Yeah, the actor's actor.
He sells tickets.
But he's the actor's actor,
He
the
sells
consummate guy. He moves from TV to film to stage. He's always been loyal to the stage. I went to Boston University, BFA, and he was up there doing Richard II back in 1971. He's always been a big fan of the theater, never left it, and a great guy, a lovely guy to work with.
And a dedicated actor.
But you're right.
Absolutely.
He sells tickets too.
Actor. So,
and sells tickets.
And sells tickets.
And sells.
To a show that might not be getting good reviews. Yes.
Even.
Yes.
China Doll was not well reviewed, am I right?
No, it was not.
It was not, but he sold tickets.
He sold
He
tickets.
sold tickets. It was
He
one of
sold
the,
tickets.
he
People
sold,
wanted to come to see him, even in a show that was not well reviewed.
oh,
And
absolutely.
and you know something? He was Al Pacino in that. I mean, he delivers what the audience expected. And maybe that's why it was able to do as well as it did, considering the storyline and the plot were a little soft. David Mamet could have worked on it a little bit better, a little bit more, but out delivered his performance.
You know, Stuart, you mentioned Enron, which is a fascinating case because it was a huge hit on the West End, right? Huge in London. And then it came in New York and it didn't go over. What happened?
Too soon.
Too close to 9/11 and the event and how people felt for them to be able to laugh at it. I think the Brits, of course, making fun of Americans is part of their pastime. They love that. But Americans were taking it a little too much to heart.
It's also a British playwright doing a commentary on an American economic financial disaster. I think that even though it was so well drawn out as a story, but it was hard to take somebody else, and that's why I see it was too close, because these people that had suffered because of the the economic losses because of Enron were still feeling that, and that was huge.
Did you have any of these reservations at the time, or is this hindsight and 2020 vision after the fact?
No, I thought it was well explained. It was a story that told, to open up a Wall Street Journal or a New York Times and talk about a financial crisis is not really compelling. But the way that Lucy Prebble had written that story, so that she made characters, made dinosaurs, raptors out of financial instruments. We're actually like going through and eating things, like on the stage. And I think that, that sort of visualization, that sort of theatrical storytelling was compelling. And it explained how could this huge company take everybody down with it? And I think that, Marin Maisie was ruthless in that. The character that she played was just, cringeworthy. So it was just really well done. But as I said, I think that it was, I didn't see that one coming. I didn't see it coming with those kinds of reviews that we got, that it closed so fast. I was like, okay, too soon to tell that story.
And ran in London for years after that.
When a show isn't working and it opens and closes quickly, do you know before the fact? Let me bring up, Stuart, you had 2 one-night flops, which are fascinating to hear about. Frankenstein at the Palace with Diane Wiest, and a show that probably nobody remembers, Teaneck Tansy with Deborah Harry, one night. We don't have one-night flops anymore. Did you know it was coming in both cases?
Well, in the case of Frankenstein, you can only say that you look at the box office and you're not generating any real fire there. So as you approach opening night, Judgment Day, whether you have enough ammunition to really survive that. So are we going to have a lot of advanced sales to keep us going, or are we going to be scrambling by the time? And then we just got hit with both barrels of the shotgun. Lousy reviews, no one at the box office, across the boards. The critics didn't like the show, and this was the most expensive non-musical produced on Broadway at that time. It was $2 million, and nobody wants to walk away from $2 million. Let me tell you, and it was heartbreaking. But the audiences did not want to see the Frankenstein monster like it was depicted in the original book by Shelley. They wanted to see Boris Karloff's monster, and we weren't delivering that. Our monster was poetic, erudite, philosophical, and they did not want to see that. Meanwhile, we had Bran Ferren doing our special effects. He had just come off of Altered States, a science fiction movie, and so he actually created the Victor Frankenstein's lab in the palace with the Jacob's ladders, the things that they had. And then at the end, the entire theater collapsed on itself with boulders, and we had surround sound vibrating the seats. I mean, it was an amazing experience, probably ahead of its time in terms of the immersive experience we're experimenting with today. So yes, we ended up. Now the good news is we only held that mantle for about 20 years, and then On the Waterfront opened, and then it was a non-musical $3 million. They closed in one night. So, but I'm still on the wall at Joe Allen's if you go there.
Okay. Is there ever a time when a show opens, it doesn't have good reviews, the audience isn't there, but if the producers hold on, they might just make it? I have one example, the original production of Carrie. I thought it was terrific. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. It had an audience. People who were there loved that show. They closed it after about 4 performances. If the producers had stayed with it, I'm sure they would have found an audience, and the reviews would not have mattered. People who loved the show, I was one of them, went back again and again, and we just loved it. It didn't matter if the critics didn't think it was great.
Well, historically, when you produce a Broadway show, you spend all the capital to take you to opening night. That's generally it. The marketing, the sets, the costumes, everything is spent by opening night, and then you have your operating expenses and costs that you cover with your ticket sales. If you don't have the advanced sales, if you don't have the line at the box office, my conversation with Jimmy the morning after Frankenstein was like, what are the critics? The critics all hated it. Any advanced sale at the box office? No advanced sale at the box office. Any lines at the box office? No lines. He said, let's cut bait and save our money for the next show, because it's going to cost another $500,000 at least to put together a marketing campaign to go out and sell this show. Then you need another $500,000 at least to cover your losses while you build that audience to come in, and you don't know whether that audience is going to show up or not. So the answer to your question is that's why Carrie didn't go on.
But I think that, post-pandemic, when theater starts to open back up again, because we were seeing a trend toward this before COVID, is the power of digital engagement, which is what Broadway HD is all about.
Yes, I want to ask you about that. Yes.
Well, there's a lot of digital engagement. Can be 1,000 different things. It can be emails, it can be blogs, it can be blogs, it can be webinars. All of these things that are digital data that's transmitted is some sort of a digital engagement with an audience. So ticket selling is not the same thing that it was for Carrie, for Will Rogers Follies, for Frankenstein. Digital tickets, digital marketing is changing all of that. That's why you're not seeing an overnight flop, is because they're able to do dynamic ticket pricing and adjust the tickets. They're able to in real time say whether or not, this show is working or not, and let's adjust things. Let's go for a different audience. We thought this was an audience that liked Frankenstein, but it's really not. It's a younger audience that's like sci-fi and anime, and we know where to find those people online. And all that sort of digital engagement is changing the way the theater industry, the Broadway industry works. And that's part of what Broadway HD is doing. So when we're talking about, shows that make it to Broadway, it's mine and Stu's belief is that if something gets to a Broadway stage, the 13 unions that are involved, the level of talent that is involved, that is a show that is worthy of a larger audience than something that could possibly close in one night. So the idea of doing a digital capture, which is the full length shooting with how we do it, is multiple high definition cameras in sound that is a tribute to the musicals, that preserving it and promoting it in that way is what Broadway HD, the mission, is all about. And that's how we shows that could close.
Explain, Bonnie, explain the very genesis of Broadway HD. We have a very theater savvy audience, but we might need to be brought up to speed about the origins of Broadway HD, how it functions, and did it thrive during the pandemic year? That sort of thing. Please tell us about your organization.
Well, Broadway HD is a streaming service, a subscription streaming service, in the same way that Netflix is a streaming subscription service. So you pay your monthly fee or your annual fee, and you have access, as long as you are connected to the internet, for, to see any of the shows that are on there. At this time, Broadway HD has about 350 full-length stage plays and musicals from Broadway, the West End, and our regional theaters. What differentiates Broadway HD from some of the other theater streaming, Zoom things that are out there, not to be dismissive of anybody's, theater that they're doing in COVID, but I was just on an OTT, an over-the-top conference for technology, companies, media technology companies. And they were saying that the differentiator with Broadway HD is high, high, high. So the first high is high quality productions on the stage. So everything that gets to Broadway, we want to shoot. Then the second high is the high definition, high level of recording that we do. It's multiple cameras, the microphones are off of the bodies of the actors, and then it's high quality distribution. So Broadway HD is a streaming service that the technology platform is the same, secure platform to house the intellectual property, which is the shows, the, customer information, which is how we engage with our, hundreds of thousands of, people that come onto the site and come into our universe every day. And with the, the payment collection everything has to be secure. So we're high, high, high in our, videos that we're doing, in the productions that we're on stage, and the way that our distribution is. And okay,
How do you choose? How do you choose the show?
Everything is high, 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 but our costs are low, low, low. $8.99 a month
true.
and $100
for consumers. Yes,
$100 a year or $8.99 a month. So the costs are down and the quality is high. I'd say, I mean, of the shows we have, if you want to see Kelly O'Hara doing King and I, we have that. We've got.
You can see Kelly O'Hara doing Carousel.
Yeah, we got Memphis. We've got
Porgy and Bess.
Kinky Boots. We have the production of 42nd Street that was directed by the original book writer Mark Bramble, that he directed in London. So we've got a wide range.
Actors. So those kinds of.
Do you choose the titles that become part of your library? Do they come to you? How does that work?
We have over 350 shows right now. We're adding new shows every single month. And we just celebrated, well, we're 5.5 years old now. So we've been doing this for 5.5 years. And if you want to get back to the pre 5.5 years, we started with doing one-offs, which was sort of, we had the opportunity to shoot one thing at a time because we were involved with the stage production. So we were part of the show of producing shows. And so we were able to, grab those shows first and aggregate them. So, I mean, that's really the legacy that Broadway HD will leave behind, is it is the aggregator for all of these stage to screen productions, promoting and preserving these big productions.
Yeah, it was a learning curve that we had, where we started doing like Cyrano de Bergerac with Kevin Kline and saying, there's a DVD market out there. There's an in cinema market out there for alternative content. There's pay-per-view out there. I mean, as different platforms began to manifest themselves, then came the ultimate, the buffering, the internet, how people were getting their entertainment from now on their cell phones, on their iPads, on their laptops. And that made the DVD obsolete. Forget Blu-ray, look to the future. People are going to be streaming everything. And that's where Bonnie and I saw an opportunity to really sell Broadway to a wider audience, make it, democratize it, make it affordable and accessible.
And where's your audience come from? Around the country, around the world?
We have subscribers in 122 different countries, because Broadway doesn't get to everywhere. And right now, I mean, for the past year, we're really the only fully functioning, Broadway entity that's still up and running, sadly, but we're still trying to keep, an audience that loves this art form engaged with this art form, because people's habits change, consumers' habits change. And when the pandemic, loosens things up, people are going to go back out again. And even, our habits have changed in how we shop. Nobody's going into malls. Nobody's going into flagship stores anymore, unless what are they going to be? They're not shopping. It's experiential, which means they're trying to be more theatrical, more of an immersive experience, which then overlaps into theater. So they're again going to be more competition for theater than they were before, when you would just go to the mall and go into a store and shop. So I think to keep the spirit alive, to keep the, these big shows, keep people thinking about theater, is huge. So there's a big world out there outside of just the people that were able to go to those 41 Broadway theaters. And even when tours go out, big tours, they only go to about 35 different countries. So you miss another 150 countries that just will never, they don't have the infrastructure set up to house a Broadway tour. And it just, they know about Broadway. The Broadway League, which is the trade association for the theater owners, the presenters, producers, and general managers, have been building the Broadway brand in a global way for years. And what that means is that everybody knows what Broadway is. When Stu and I, when everybody used to travel and we'd say we worked in Broadway, people would be like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! Oh wow, how exciting!" And we could say to them, "Well, what was the last Broadway show you saw?" And sometimes the answer would be, "I've never been to Broadway. I've never seen a Broadway show." But that's how powerful the Broadway brand is. So that if they can't get to Broadway and they've never been there and they know about it and we're giving them access now, that's huge. That is huge. And that turns people into theater goers, because what we're finding is that the digital access is an appetite builder for the live stage experience. And we used to get more pushback.
It doesn't replace.
No, it never replaces.
It doesn't replace the live stage experience.
Yes, but if I said to you,
it increases enthusiasm.
Yes, it does. But people, they want to keep pushing back and saying like, well, it doesn't replace it. No, it doesn't. But if you look at, if I took you out to a fine French restaurant and we had a great meal, you wouldn't look at me at the end of the meal and say, well, it doesn't replace Paris. No, they're two different things. And I think that's what the digital versus going to the theater. If you look at how many people there are in this country that are sports fans, there's millions of sports fans. We know sports fans that people don't even go. You can ask kids anywhere that have never been to a football game, who's Tom Brady? And they'll tell you exactly who Tom Brady is. And they can tell you what the number is on his jersey, regardless of what team that he's at. Why don't we have people wearing Bernadette Peters or Laura Osnes's name on their shirts? Because we're not a theater going culture. We're just not a theater going, society here. And that's what we're trying to do. If you've never been there, if you're not aware of it, if you don't know who the players are and you have nothing, no connection to them, then you don't care. So if you can now see people, you have access to see who these players are. You can see Bernadette Peters, you can see Laura Osnes, you can see Katrina Lenk, and you can see them, in your own home at your own convenience for, a fraction of the cost that it would take you to go to the theater. And what we've seen in the pandemic is that, with the early release of Hamilton on Disney Plus, and people said, oh, if people aren't, if they can see it online, if they can stream it, if they can go see, then they won't go to the theater. But what is everybody talking about now that we're watching digital theater? I can't wait till it comes back. I saw Hamilton on Disney Plus, and now the risk is eliminated. I'm going to go spend that money on that ticket because I know I will like it now. And that is what the power of the digital capture is that it eliminates the risk. Those tickets are $125 a piece for a Broadway show. People are very hesitant to slap that down. That's for what? It's $125 if you're going by yourself. We have for $100, you get to see all 350 shows. And even if that particular show isn't in a theater near you, it still increases your interest and increases your appetite to go and see the live experience.
Yeah, I think going forward, every Broadway show is going to be professionally shot and preserved. And I think that, and being able to show, I'm not talking multi-cameras, sound, first-rate preservation of it that can be monetized down the road, because we have the flexibility of holding it, showing it to a country or not showing it to a country, showing it in Chicago or holding back from Chicago. We can actually, geo-block it on a global scale, depending on whether there's a touring company out or a London production.
Who hires the professional photographers, you or the production?
I mean, we have over 350 different shows. So just like, you know, Netflix, there isn't one way that it happens. It happens in multiple different ways. Sometimes we are involved in the stage production and in the digital capture, which is the TV, you know, recording part of it. Sometimes we're only involved in the TV recording of it. And sometimes someone else is involved in the stage production and the digital recording, and we just license it. Those are just three basic ways that we can, you know, we can get content. But when Broadway HD does one of the captures, you know, there are 17 different unions that we have to deal with on Broadway, or that we get to deal
Plus
with.
SAG and AFTRA.
Like that. You know, there's, yes, but there's, you know, so there's 13 that are the stage and 4 additional to get the TV. But one of the, you know, the things that we do is that we keep the integrity of what the stage piece is. Because if you go in with cameras, you can totally change what's there, you know, into something else with cameras and editing. We know that. So we go in with TV directors that really love and are passionate about theater, and they work with the stage directors to protect that vision. The creative vision of the stage, you know, team has to be protected. And so when we go in, we
So
don't.
what we see, Bonnie, is a recreation of the stage performance, not a filmmaker's interpretation or shaping of it.
Well,
That's-
Foster, it's really a new art form in itself,
Yes.
because we hire our own director to shoot it. So we're trying to keep the integrity of the director of the production in line with shooting it with like 14 different cameras. So we're doing not only, you know, you not only do you have the best seat in the house, you have the best seat all over the house, plus close-ups and point of view shots, plus a shot of the conductor, plus shots that you would never get sitting in a show. So in a sense, we've created a new art form that's just becoming recognized by the industry itself. I mean, for the first time ever, Hamilton not only legitimized everything we've been doing the last 5 years, but it was up for best new TV movie, a live capture of a Broadway show.
So
Yeah.
it's an art form in itself, but a new one. And we have to find new ways of judging it, really. It's not exactly a movie, and it's not exactly the play on the stage. It's someplace in the middle.
Yes, it is. And we, you know, we have been for years been dismissed as something less than, which is hard to take, but it's, you know, just to the point, you know, Hamilton being nominated for Golden Globes really did put this kind of art form on the map. I mean, it was there before. Broadway HD, Stu and I didn't invent digital capture, which is really, you know, a digital capture is different than a film, because a digital capture is going into the theater. You know, ideally it's in the theater in front of a live audience, done in real time. And what we do is we shoot multiple performances so that we have, in case anything happens or in case we missed an angle, we have other, you know, other video that we can edit in and say, oh, this angle was better from this, you know, this other performance, so let's use that. You know, that kind of thing. We enhance lighting and sound are really two of the things that we do most often enhance. And that doesn't mean that we change it. It means that the lighting that the camera needs in order to recreate what's on the stage sometimes needs to be, you know, different or enhanced or more lighting for the camera lens to see what what your eye would see if you were in the theater.
But the shows that your people are photographing are being given in front of a live audience.
Well, that's the core content. The core content of Broadway HD is these digital captures, or a live capture, they're called, because they're done in, you know, live in real time and then recorded, or sometimes they're live streamed. So Broadway HD, we did a lot more live streams at the beginning of, you know, when we first launched. We actually made the Guinness World Record back in 2016 for the first live stream ever of a Broadway show with She Loves Me, with the Roundabout Theater Company. But, you know, what we found for our audience is they were less concerned about the live, that it be live, than having access to those shows at their convenience. So we live stream streamed it at 8 o'clock at night, from New York City. And we had 84 different countries that were watching it in real time that night, which is kind of crazy because our advertising and marketing dollars were all, English and US centric. So, it's that power of the internet that the word got out there and people were watching it in 84 different countries while it was happening. But we had just as many, and then now, so many more that have watched it, the capture of it, which is the recording part.
Yeah.
And so with the live capture, the live streaming part, we haven't done as many because we found it, for the added risk of, something going wrong, like it happened with Rent. I don't know if you were familiar with the Rent that they did. There was supposed to be a live Rent, and one of the actors actually broke his foot. So it was a tape from the night before, and then they added some live elements to it. So, that added risk of something goes wrong with a satellite uplink or something.
But the mandate of the shows that we've shot for Broadway HD was to try and recreate the facsimile of the live theater going experience. So the important thing was to include the audience in what's going on, hear them coughing, hear them laughing, hear them applauding, but keeping the authenticity of an actor on stage holding for applause, catching his breath or her breath after a long dance routine. So you get a sense of in this electronic age, the idea of humanity and the humanness of what goes on and the effort much more appreciated by seeing it live captured rather than cutting away in a film or go to commercial break, that kind of thing. So it's a big difference. And I think in this age, it'll become even more popular. As I said, I think every Broadway show is going to want to be shot down the road just to help it live on beyond its run on Broadway.
Let me, before we throw it open to the house, let me just ask you, as commercial Broadway producers, are you optimistic about the return of Broadway?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, the audience, you've never seen a more fiercely loyal audience. We talk about, Bonnie and I talk about, a Yankee fan will buy a season's ticket and see every show. And then, me, I'll wait for the World Series, and then that's when I'll go see it. We're a subscriber-based theater company, and the people who love the theater love seeing the shows, and they are very loyal, and they're growing every day as the word gets out. We're just scraping the surface of people even being aware that BroadwayHD.com exists. So no, definitely there's the future there, and then we're it.
But I mean,
And live Broadway is going to have a complete, you're confident, you're looking forward to it after this terrible year. That's going to be.
Yes, I mean, we're not sure, as I said, it's not all going to come back at once. It's going to layer back in.
But it will come back.
But it'll come back. I mean, it's a very, creative, collaborative community. And Broadway is an economic driver in New York City. You look at the number of tickets that are sold, it's, billions of dollars. The impact is in billions of dollars, the economic impact of the Broadway industry in New York City. And to talk about the power of the Broadway brand, 20 years ago when people came to New York City, tourists would come and they would go to the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty, and maybe they'd go see a Broadway show. And that's what they'd say. But now, people, the reason they came to New York City was to see a Broadway show. And then while they were here, maybe they'll go see the Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building. So that's the power of that brand. And that was what, it's a huge economic driver that the Broadway industry is. And it's not just for in New York, because we talk about the Broadway and we always talk about New York, but Broadway touring theaters are the hubs, they're the cultural hubs across this country. There's 200 touring Broadway theaters, and they have that same economic impact and that same, community building. Nothing builds a community like a big arts institution like a Broadway theater. You can build a movie theater, you can build a bowling alley, but it doesn't, increase the number of people that graduate from high school, that vote in that community, that then contribute to that community in the same way that arts organizations pull communities together like that. It is a cohesive, economic, driver in a community is theater, and nothing does it like a big theater. So it definitely will be back.
If I can just, I can just add to that, that this didn't happen overnight. This has been from the depths of the 1970s. It's taken 40 years to build the Broadway brand up and expand it across America. So the Broadway brand and what it stands for took years to come about. So this is something that's not going to disappear overnight. There's a great foundation. And I said 40, I can go through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the development of 42nd Street when Disney came in. I mean, we established a brand that is going to last. So I definitely know Broadway's coming back.
Oh, good. I'm coming from insiders. I trust you. I hear you. I'm relieved. I was getting discouraged. I'm much less discouraged after spending this time with you. Mark, we have some questions from the house.
We have two, but first I wanted to add a little comment on your Broadway HD. Another thing it's doing is it's reaching the next generation of an audience, which is so important for us to grow that next generation of theater growers. The one question I have that pertaining to that is, are you also streaming the nonprofit theater, small regional theaters, things like that, or is it focused purely for the Broadway show?
Our content comes from different areas, and there are some smaller regional theater companies that we're talking to. But right now in COVID, there are union concessions being made. And I don't know if that's really what the question is there are these live streams with subsequent, 2-week windows to view these productions. And those are, a lot of them, most of them are non-professional. So there's no quality control there. The pricing is also very all over the place. So you're getting like, oh, free, pay what you can, up to, $2,500, for access to it. So it's kind of all over the place. And again, Broadway HD stands out as a much better value proposition, because you can watch 350 shows for, $8.99 a month versus, and the going price seems to be about $15 for these non-union or amateur live streams that they're doing across the country right now. But those are going to be ending very soon, because there's no quality control, and the creators don't want those shows preserved, because there is no quality control. So, Stephen Sondheim and Andrew Lloyd Webber don't want the not to be dismissive of the community theater, but a lot of these production, are just being done in COVID. So they're, and what people have asked for these theater companies in the last year is these live theater producing entities, that's what their business is producing live stage shows. But because of COVID, everybody suddenly had to, felt like they had to live stream shows. So they suddenly had to become TV studios overnight, which is, there's plenty of TV studios out there, and they, it's not easy. It's not easy to do, and it's very expensive.
Yeah, we've actually shot regional theater. We've done some shows that played off Broadway, like Ruthless and Toxic Avenger. We've shot those. We've shot it in California. In fact, we did a recording of Janis Joplin out there that was just terrific, because it was the Broadway Tony-nominated actress in the lead role. So we do a lot of regional theater as well to help support the theater throughout the country.
But Broadway HD's content is the professional productions.
And the other question I have is, what does winning a Tony Award mean to the bottom line?
Oh boy, well, let me tell you, the whole Tony Awards.
Makes everyone feel good.
Yeah, well, it became a major, when Alex Cohn started televising the Tony Awards, it became the biggest commercial for Broadway they'd ever seen. And to be able to present a number on the Tony Awards, especially a new one that people hadn't even heard of a show that might have opened up 2 weeks before the Tonys opened up, was amazing. So the value of a Tony Award is invaluable, and I mean priceless. Because when a tourist comes into town, they go, well, what show won the Tony this year? Oh, okay, Hamilton. Okay, I'll go see that.
But I think, you really, what I've told people before is award-winning shows don't always make money, and money-making shows don't always win awards. And, the Al Pacino is a perfect example of our, of our China doll that, the critics just absolutely hated it. And it was almost, other producers, in the space that year were kind of like, oh my God, you were involved with that. Like, you should hang your head and be embarrassed. I said, it made money. So sometimes, you just make money, and that's you know, that's the bottom line.
That's
So
the curse.
as commercial
Sometimes you make
producers,
money.
yeah, as commercial producers, sometimes that's what we get. We, you know, we're an embarrassment to the community, but we make money with it.
You know the expression, how do you make a small fortune in the theater? Start with
With a large one. By the way, I should brag here for a moment that Alexander Cohen was a member of the Lambs. Question from Sandy Durrell was, whose idea was it to launch Broadway HD, and how did you work around all the unions?
We haven't worked around all the unions. We are constantly working with all of the unions. And as I said, there's 13 unions on Broadway. Stu and I are proud card-carrying members of unions. So it's very important to us that everyone that creates a show be compensated for it. And it's not, you know, just one person that makes these decisions within unions. It's a coalition. It is a group of people that, you know, sometimes very fiercely negotiate for these rates, these royalties, these fees. And so we respect that, but we feel that, you know, people that do work on shows need to be compensated. And so we feel very strongly with that, and that, you know, there's nothing that says professionalism like the 13 Broadway unions, in our opinion. So we feel that every show that hits a Broadway stage should get a digital capture and should be seen by a wider audience. We really, truly believe that. But that said, it was my idea.
That being said, this is something we've been working on for, you know, decades, because we've seen other people try to capture and use what was available out there at the time. So whether it was a pay-per-view on cable, or whether it was a digital capture for videotape or DVD, or whether alternative content for a movie theater, there wasn't enough of an audience to really create a business that would generate enough revenue. Now, I think I mentioned this earlier, but once the younger people started getting involved with, you know, all those kids that did Wicked in high school, or Rent, were now growing, now 30 years old, or Phantom of the Opera, and they've been doing these shows, and they're watching entertainment on their iPads and their cell phones and their laptops. So that's where we saw the future. DVDs, that's the past. Look for the future. And that's where we saw it going. So after a few shows that we experimented with, like we did Neil Patrick Harris with the New York Philharmonic doing Company with an all-star cast, that actually was very successful. So there was gold in Membar Hills. We knew there was a way of making a profit with it. A few less successful ones that we were part of the learning curve was Cyrano de Bergerac that we did with Kevin Kline, and Orlando Bloom doing Romeo and Juliet. So, you know, it was a process, but eventually we came up with the formula, and we were the first ones there to do it.
And part of that is aggregating all this content into one place. So in the same way that, you know, Turner Classics pulls everybody together, or Cartoon Network pulls, or MTV pulls all the same, you know, if that's the type of content, if that's the type of show that you want to see, is you want to see theater, you want to see a professional stage, you know, show, Broadway HD is the aggregator of all of that content. And yes, there are other platforms. There are, you know, Netflix and Disney Plus and other ones that have a piece here or there, but where, you know, at some point we'll have all those other shows because it makes more sense for these other, you know, companies to license things to us. We are really where these shows will live going forward, to aggregate them and put them all into one place. So we're the, you know, the engagement platform for people that want to watch theater in the middle of the night or in the morning, you know, have your Shakespeare for breakfast.
So we just have a few more minutes. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Foster.
Yes, actually, I want to ask Stuart a question, because Stuart wears several hats. You're a writer, and I love the titles of two of your books, because it seems to me that they speak to Broadway of the moment and the future. One, The Jews of Broadway, and the second one, Black Broadway, if I have the titles right, but that's the subject matter. And in both, one of them is a sort of looking backwards, and the other one is a looking forward. How did you choose those two topics, and were you aware of how much they complement each other?
Well, the answer of complementing each other is yes. The Jews on Broadway first, and then I said, what else? You know, I love, as you know, I love the theater, the American theater. I love how it represents, and I love how it's grown over the years. And to recognize the contribution of, let me say, the minorities So whether it's the Jewish contribution to the plays and the musical theater, or the African American contribution to what we've done, totally unrecognized, certainly in the Black community that I was able to find out. When I started writing the book, I figured, oh, I'll just stick with the 20th century. But this goes back to Revolutionary War periods where they had their own Shakespeare company downtown. I mean, it's a fascinating story. And I had a great publisher that helped me decide to put a timeline on the bottom of the script as well, so you know what was going on with the civil rights movement through the centuries as we progressed to present day. So yes, it helps look to the future. And in fact, I had 2 editions on Jews on Broadway, where I actually updated it with a lot more, well, contemporary names that are out there, very active out there. It was a pleasure. Both of them were great books to write. I had a great time doing it, and I learned a lot along the way.
But the Black Broadway is going to have to be updated.
It will. I think I left off with Trip to Bountiful was one of the last shows I had on that, and that's already, 3 years old at least.
And you're also a playwright, and I believe you wrote If This Was Easy with Ward Morehouse, and I've been told that Mrs. Morehouse is with us tonight.
Catherine, yes.
Hello.
There
Yes,
you go.
Yes.
yes, it's a wonderful play, and Bonnie was the star of it. I heard.
Yeah, in the off-Broadway,
Yeah,
off-Broadway.
I didn't get to see it, but
Oh, well, nice that you're with us. I'm happy to acknowledge you. Yes.
thank you
Great
for having me. It's a
working
pleasure.
Yeah, Ward was great to work with. We had a lot of fun. We were sort of holed up at a house in Connecticut for the summer, and we're writing away on it. And we were the first one to try and get a Sinatra, story out there. Ward actually wrote about it in a column that was published around the world. I actually got mail from Scandinavia saying, "Oh, you're doing a Sinatra play? That's great. Let me invest." I mean, he started it.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Sue talked about the storyline, which was about a producer who, after Frank Sinatra died, you thought like, hey, what would be the next show? Oh, we should do a story about Sinatra. And Ward actually put a story out there saying like, hey, you know what? Somebody should do this. Somebody like Stuart Lane should actually write this musical about Sinatra.
Right.
And what happened was they ended up writing a fictitious story about 2 producers coming up with the idea that they would like to do a story about Sinatra, but it wasn't actually about Sinatra.
No.
It was about how difficult it would be to try and write a story about
And
Sinatra.
it sort of does the myth that every man has a little bit of Sinatra in him, but only one man can be Frank Sinatra.
Have either of you ever taught? Because I think you would be great teachers. I'm a teacher myself. I recognize fellow players here. You'd be great teachers, and we need to have good teachers talking about what a theatrical producer does. Have you ever given seminars or taught in a college
Yes.
We do. We don't do full time. We've only done guest
Master classes and
Class.
You have done that. You have
We
done that.
we have done that. And we really enjoy it, but it's just, so, hats off to you that do it full time, because I don't think it's not something we have 5 kids too. So, so that I include that in our teaching piece.
So we've done, NYU, Boston University, Emerson,
Columbia.
Good. Good. I hope you'll continue to do that, because I've learned so much tonight, and I'm sure our audience has. Thank you so much for being with us. Mark, I'll turn it back to you and Magda. Thank you so much.
And Stuart and Monty, thanks again so much on behalf of the Lambs. And hopefully we're all going to see a great theatrical life on the other side of all this. You are encouraging. We all are going to be supporting theater. Magda, do you have any words before we sign off? Got to unmute yourself.
Well, I want to thank both of you. You were absolutely fantastic. I've learned so much. I thought I knew so much, but I realized I know so little after I've spoken to you. It's been such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much. And before we go, I'd like to thank Foster again for his wonderful interviewing and Mark for helping me put this together. And our next interview will be March 23rd with Lee Grant, followed on March 30th by Piper Laurie, and April 6th by George Chakiris, who won the Academy Award for West Side Story. So I hope many of you will join us. Thank you so much again.
And for everyone else, the Lambs is a social club, and you can visit our website and you'll see videos of all our past interviews that we've held online last year. And this one will join them sometime tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Well,
everybody.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Bonnie.
Everybody.
Thank you.